Well, welcome to our May Jam session. I'm so excited today to have Rita Devassy with us, and she is our good client we've known for a long time, and I love when we can bring in your wisdom, your gifts, and Rita's been a part of the Syzygy family for a long time. She's also been my own teacher, my own guide when it comes to mindfulness. And so I'm super excited to have you here today, Rita. So thank you for joining in and sharing your good wisdom.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, as well. And thank you all for joining. And, in the spirit of mindfulness, what do you think we're going to do first? We're actually going to do a bit of mindfulness. And, this is what we're going to do during the course of this entire time that we're together is use this time to practice mindfulness. So whether we're listening, whether we're talking to each other, whether we're intentionally just going to be quiet, whatever you're doing over the next hour, you can apply it as a practice of mindfulness. So one of the things I always like to do, and I always remind myself to do whenever I'm starting something, like this is a gathering of all of us together, to really bring my attention to this space that I'm in with you. And so we're all kind of remote, which is really cool. We're all over the place, but we're all together, right? So one of the things that we want to do to start this is just get into a posture that feels alert for you. So whatever that means, whether that means, you're going to sit up straight, whatever that means for you. So feel awake and feel alert. So that's what I would recommend. So you might be sitting on a chair, which is perfectly fine. If you're sitting on the floor on a cushion, that's perfectly fine. Wherever you are, just get comfortable in the seat that you're in. And what I would recommend is, if you're sitting on the chair, make sure that your feet are, planted on the floor in a very gentle and soft way. You don't have to push into the floor. Just kind of feel your feet touching the floor. And then notice if, your body feels relaxed. Notice the front of your body and see if it feels soft. You can place your hands on your lap wherever they fall. You can place them palms up, palms down, whatever's comfortable. And I would recommend you can close your eyes if you like, if that's the practice that you have. But I always encourage people to practice with your eyes open, because that makes this practice something you can do pretty much anywhere. So you don't have to be in a special place or time to be able to do it. So hold your eyes to the floor, just a soft gaze to the floor. And breathe normally. And then just check in with yourself and ask yourself, how are you doing right now? Is there something that you're experiencing? Are you feeling something? Are you thinking about something? Is there a part of your body that's like calling your attention right now? Just notice whatever comes up as you're sitting quietly. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes or raise your gaze if you were looking down to the floor. And then I always recommend, kind of shifting your body, moving it, move your arms, move your feet, shake things out. So that's a simple practice, a simple mindfulness practice that you can do, whether, you're in a meeting and you sit down, you start with that. And now the way I, described it, it sounded kind of elaborate and long. But when you're doing it, you sit down and you just do that posture work that we just did. And you just stay quiet for a few seconds and just breathe normally. And you can do that for 30 seconds. You can do that for 60 seconds. You can do it for however long you want. And so what we're going to talk about today is, what is mindfulness? We're going to talk about, one of the things I hear from clients and friends and family alike is, I don't have time. I don't know how to, fit this into my day. I've got so many things to do. This is the last thing I'm going to do. So we're going to talk about, like, how do you find time to practice this? And then, if you're still kind of on the fence on, like, do I really need to do this? We'll talk about why practicing mindfulness is helpful. And then during the course of this entire time that we're together, we are going to experience mindfulness. And so that's, that's how you're going to know these are some ways that you can easily insert into your day to just kind of go, right? It just feels like you just kind of calm down and slow down for a few seconds in a given day. So with that, Sarah, if you could advance to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what I want to do with this slide, this is not really a definition per se, but it is kind of a description of what is mindfulness. And so what I'm going to do is, as we go through each of these bullet points, what I want you to start doing is almost like feeling what each of these sentences might be communicating to you. And so, and so what we're going to do is I'm going to read the first sentence, but then I want you to almost, and before I continue, if people have questions, I don't know if there's a way for people to interject while I'm talking so that people can actually respond or ask questions. I want that to happen as we're going through this conversation. So
yes,
Sarah and Cammie, I'm assuming they'll.
Okay, we'll watch cool. The rate. To have them, you guys can just raise your hand and we'll watch for that. Perfect. Popping up.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. So part of what we're going to do is I want you to really get into experiencing what mindfulness feels like, even in this context of we're all on a call together. This could be equivalent to I'm on a call at work, whether it's virtual or whether you're in person with people. It could be, I'm having dinner with my family. It could be I want to just practice this on my own and I'm sitting in the woods under a tree and I'm practicing this. So this is relevant for any situation you find yourself in. And so to really get into that mode, and so I'm going to encourage you to keep that posture and keep those elements of being aware of your experience as you're listening to me and as we go through this time together. And so I'm going to start with that first point is you can practice this anytime and anywhere. So just being quiet right now and listening without having to formulate a response to me or formulate a question that you want to ask down the road, and just staying in this moment, you're practicing mindfulness. So you can practice it anywhere, anytime. So you don't have to wait for that perfect moment. You just use your experience as the vehicle to practice mindfulness. And so what are you doing when you practice mindfulness? You're staying in the moment. So I'm sure you've heard that many times. It's like, yeah, just stay in the moment. And that sounds like such a simple thing to do. Well, yeah, I'll just stay in the moment. But for us, there's so many things that are going on with us. We are either, there might be things that you're hearing me say that are kind of triggering thoughts in your mind. There may be things that I'm saying that are triggering potentially like an emotional kind of response. Maybe there's something you're experiencing in your body as you listen to me, right? Being aware of all of that is how you're staying in the moment versus trying to make sense of, well, why is she saying that? And why am I feeling this? And instead of getting caught in the narrative, you're aware that you're experiencing things. That's how you know you're staying in the moment. There's an element of staying silent, which, yes, I'm talking a lot, which it's unfortunately what I have to do at this moment. But, staying silent is really difficult for us. For a lot of us, we like to fill in the space with whatever we can. It's just how we've been trained to do things. If we are sitting quietly, we feel like, wow, I should be writing that blog, I should be, meeting with that potential client, et cetera, et cetera. And those are all important things. It's not to lessen the importance of that. Those things have to happen. But the point is, you need to have time to reset what's going on in here. You need time to heal. You need time to rest and allow everything that's happening around you to kind of settle for you, for all of us. And so that's the practice of just staying quiet. That's part of practicing mindfulness. And you're also observing your experience moment by moment. So when we talk about mindfulness, it's a moment by moment by moment experience. For me, and I don't know about everyone on the call, but for me, that's a pretty, it makes it easier for me in that, I don't have to think about everything right now. Like I can just stay here. Moment by moment, I stay here with you. Versus getting caught, like I have to go to Denver right after this call, right? If I were distracted by that, then this experience becomes something that I'm not really experiencing because I'm caught in what's coming later. And so just observing like what is happening with me right now, that's the practice of mindfulness. If I were to convey like what I'm experiencing right now, I don't have socks on, FYI. My feet are feeling my toes, the tip of my toes are a little cold right now. And my fingers, the tips are cold. And so I'm aware of that right now. I'm not trying to make sense of it. I don't need to know why, but I'm just aware. And that's the practice. Because that gives me, if I wanted to take action about something, that's a good cue for me. And you're allowing your experience to be as it is. So another thing that all of us tend to do, maybe not all of us, most of us, we always want to change the experience that we're having, right? So it could be something like you're in a meeting and you're dreaming about your vacation because you're just like, this is like, I just can't wait to go and sit on the beach. And, this is great that this conversation's happening right now, but I'd rather be on the beach. So that's an experience where we're resisting and not allowing things to just kind of unfold and be present to what it is. Our nature is to try and manipulate and change and, because we think we just know what's better. And so that's kind of our tendency, and it's a training that we've also been trained, I think, to do that over time. But allowing it to just kind of unfold in its own time, right, should be effortless. We just allow it. And the idea is that when you create this space for yourself through practicing all these things that I just went through, you actually give yourself choices that are intentional. You're not, you've heard the term autopilot. We're kind of like, we're fast moving. All of us are, we have a lot of things to get done, right, in a given day as entrepreneurs and as working in the corporate space. And I don't know the mix of folks that are on this call, but any of us, our days are full. And so how do you make intentional choices? And that's what this practice helps with, because you're doing it moment by moment and you're very intentional. And so you're choosing how you want to respond to your experience. So right now, as you're listening to this, you're making a choice to listen to this. You made a choice to get on this call. You're making a choice to listen to what I'm saying. And you're going to make a choice to either ponder, resist, enjoy. I mean, it's endless in terms of the choices we have, right? To what you're hearing. Your choice. It's your choice on how you're going to respond to what you're hearing and to your experience. And so speaking of experience, if we could advance to the next slide, please. This is a beautiful quote by Viktor Frankl. I'm sure many of you have seen this before, but it really captures what mindfulness is actually trying to communicate. So basically it says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I just want you to sit with that for a few seconds and just kind of take that in and really kind of think about, like, what does that mean for you? And if I could ask, would anyone be willing to share, like, when you read this quote or anything that you've heard up to this point, like, what's coming up for you? Any sort of anything. It can be a realization, it could be an acknowledgement, it could be a question, it could be anything. Like, what's coming up as you listen to this, as you put this into the context of your day and of your week and of your life as you're listening to this?
So just raise your hand and I'll unmute you guys. Gretchen, you're unmute. I mean, you're muted on your side.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. I'm just thinking of the way that I often react right away to someone who says something I dislike, and so that I've struggled my whole life to, like, do that count to 10 or even count to 1 thing, and that's definitely a task of maturity.
In practice, I think, I can vouch for the fact that, yeah, like, and it's a story that I often tell when I'm meeting with people about, there were times where I just, yeah, if I didn't like it, you were probably going to hear it. And so it's one of those things of the practice, and part of, like, I'm going to keep calling this the practice because mindfulness is a practice. It's something that you do repeatedly. You're not going to be successful 100% of the time, but the idea is that if you do it enough, you are going to create pathways in your brain that allow you to kind of pause.
And see, I think a pause could be so healing right now with the political climate and with our leadership. There's no pausing going on at any level with anyone.
Yeah. And to your point, it's about listening to, right? Whether it's listening to ourselves or listening to others, if there's no space, if there's no quiet, if there's no pause, how can we hear each other? And so you're right. I think, you know, to kind of really think about how do we create, there are big things that we all want to solve, but I also keep coming back for myself is what can I do? Right? What can I repeatedly do? What is within my realm of choice and control? And to stay focused on that and get really good at that. Because again, I can vouch for that too. It's hard. It's hard to stay consistent. But that brings up a point about mindfulness is there is an element of knowing that you're not going to get it, you know, perfect and beautiful 100% of the time, and that's okay. It's to even start showing compassion to ourselves. That is also a difficult thing for us to do. It's like to show ourselves like kindness, very difficult for a lot of us to do. So, and for some of us, it's also like, how do I show it to other people around me? They don't seem deserving of that. So how am I going to show you compassion or kindness, right? Like how that's kind of the dialogue that a lot of us have. So it's a point about in this space, it's choosing our response, whether that's I'm going to be kind, I'm going to be generous, I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to kindly express what I feel, but firmly. All of these are choices that we can make through this response.
Right.
And
Rita,
so
we've got a
anyone else
question that came in. There's a statement that was sent in by Heather, and she stated that it's the importance of prioritizing positivity.
Uh-huh. That's, yeah, so prioritizing, and it's like, to me, I hear that as it's my choice. It's like it's going to be one of the highest things I do. It's always going to be on top in terms of what I'm going to select. And positivity being the one that Heather is choosing. Anyone else?
I just have one that comes to mind for me when it's, because I'm very cognizant of it right now, is how much I turn to my devices, my phone, my iPad. And when I think about the stimulus, and it's interesting because I've got my phone sitting here on my desk, right? And it's muted, but it's buzzing.
Right.
So every time something hits my phone, it's buzzing right now. And my, you know, so there's the stimulus, right? And my response of, no, stay here, don't go there. So that's that inner game that happens. And I know that that's an inner game that I personally play in too often.
Okay.
And so there's a judgment associated with that, right? But it's, I like to think of this pause of stopping and making a choice of, do I need to go there? Do I not need to go there? Leave that alone, that kind of a thing. So it's just, it's curious for me.
Yeah. And, you know, part of what you were describing too is where so everything's a choice. Like I'm going to keep coming back to that. In you know, one could choose to remove the stimulus. One could choose to keep the stimulus, as you described, right? Where it's buzzing, it's there.
Right.
Or one could choose to have it like just going ding, ding, you know, like just all over the place. Right? So there's varied kind of ways that these stimulus come in. But what I love about what you just said is that that's life in if you take it in a larger sense. Everything is stimulus to our brain, essentially. And I can't remember what the number is. It's like, I don't know, it's like 1 billion bits or something like that of information that are coming at us nonstop.
Right.
And our brains are just like, so we have a lot of mechanisms to filter stuff. But ultimately, I think it's kind of the question I would ask is, how do you feel when you have that buzzer going off? Like what happens, if you don't mind sharing, like when the buzzer goes off, is there a thought associated with it? That's a repeated thought. Like every time you hear the buzzer, the thought pops in your head, or every time you hear the buzzer, you feel something.
Yeah, I would say it's more of a feeling than it's a thought, because I think if I was to think through it, it's a, I logically can say I don't need to go there. And I totally agree. It's life is full of the noise, the people, the technology, the happenings. It's always around us. And so how do we, that going in space. So it's, for me, it's, I don't think it's a thought. It's more of it's almost an instinct feeling that draws you someplace, and then catching myself to come back to where I'm at. So that's the awareness that I'm trying to play into.
Good. Yeah. And I mean, and that's what you described, that is the practice of mindfulness, is to constantly just be aware of, what's happening when you hear that. So, it's funny, Cammie, that a long time ago, when I was working in the corporate space, my phone would ding nonstop, because I had to know when every email was coming so I could respond. And so then I think I was with Cammie once, and she goes, well, why don't you just turn the ringer off, Rita? Or the email notification sound. Right. I'm like, oh, brilliant. Yes. So let's do that. And over time, I have, I've even reduced that. So the sounds that come out of my phone are pretty limited now. And so it's I think it's, as you experience things, notice how you feel. And that's a good cue of, do I want to change something or not?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, because my phone, all those bells are turned off, but when you silence it, it moves, right? So it's how do you turn that off?
Well, there's I think it's the vibration setting or something like that. Mine makes absolutely no sounds now, unless it's the phone ringing. But anyway, but no, to your point, I love that. That's a great example of using anything you are experiencing and using that as your practice to learn something, because it is telling you something. And that's kind of what, Viktor Frankl is talking about. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So if we could advance to the next slide, please. Okay. This is a really simple way of remembering what the pause is, and it's really kind of akin to the definition of mindfulness, which is being present, being super curious about what is happening, growing in awareness. And as part of the practice, you learn what feelings and thoughts are useful for you and which are the ones that you want to throw away. Creating space is a big piece that we've been talking about. Without the space, it becomes very difficult to do any of the other things. And the space, by the way, can be 30 seconds. It can be all day, 20 minutes, but it can be 30 seconds if you choose. And empathizing. I think in life, that's one of the biggest things for us, is our connection with each other. And so how do we understand or share the feeling of others through empathy? And so this practice of mindfulness and just being quiet is a great space to open. And it really starts with the discovery within for ourselves. But it gives us a great window into our world as well. And so this is a great way to remember the word pause, to just kind of repeat that to yourself, so that you'll remember to kind of go pause, and then you'll just pause. But to even use these elements of those letters to remember, well, when I pause, what am I really doing in that pause? So with that, what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to move into the next part of our presentation, which is, if you could advance the slide, please. So I want you guys to take, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes or so. And there's two things I want you to do. And for some of you, this might not be a question, because you're like, yep, I practice it all the time. Or maybe for some of you, it is a challenge to how do I find the time to practice, and how do I do it? And so what I want you to do is, I've drawn a little circle, like a pie chart, and that's just a sample of what does your average day look like? What is it filled with? And like, don't have, 30 categories. Try to keep it at a very high level of, how much time do I have to myself? How much time am I giving to my family and my friends? How much time am I sleeping? How much time am I working? Maybe at a high level, maybe there's some other categories that you like. Take a few seconds and just kind of think about what does your average day look like? And then if you could advance to the next slide as well, please. What does your average day feel like? Okay, I want you to do 2 circles or do it however you graphically feel like or want to convey. It doesn't have to be a pie chart, but just spend a few minutes to really think about, where does my time go in a given day? And how does it feel in a given day? So this is like an average kind of an exercise. It doesn't have to be precise. So just take maybe like 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back together. So if you have a piece of paper, or hopefully you have a piece of paper in front of you that you can just kind of, or think about it if you don't want to draw, whatever works for you. So take a few minutes. Maybe take 1 more minute and then we'll come back together. So we're going to come back to what all of you noted down, but before we do, I'm going to go over a couple more slides and then we'll come back to the feedback that you all have. And so this is an interesting, take a second to read that. So essentially this was a study done by 2 Harvard psychologists, and you know, what they determined from that study, basically they had people, they downloaded an app on their phone and they would report in based on the questions that were asked of these participants, like, you know, what are you doing right now? What are you thinking? And how are you feeling? And so they were periodically just questioned on their experience, essentially. And these are thousands of people that went through this study. And what the conclusion was is that a human mind is a wandering mind, which I'm sure every one of us can attest to the fact that, yep, our mind wanders. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way our minds work, and that's okay. The part that I think is telling is that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And what the study showed was that most of the people, I think it was like close to 50% of the people, 50% of the time, we are, you know, focused on something or thinking about something other than what we are doing. So for example, you're on this call right now, and what you're doing, and hopefully you're doing, is listening to what I'm saying, right? But you could be thinking about, what am I going to cook for dinner? What am I going to do tomorrow? What did oh my God, I can't believe that happened yesterday. And so that's what they're talking about, is our minds tend to be in that state where we're doing something, but we're thinking about something else. And what we were thinking about was a better indication of whether or not we were happy about what was happening. And so the idea that, you know, our minds are going to wander anyway, that's just kind of how it goes. That's how our brains work. But that if you kind of just let it go, that's a good indication that you have an unhappy mind. That's kind of what this study is basically pointing to. And it brings to mind like that example of, not to say that Cammie's unhappy when her phone buzzes, but when that kind of buzz happens, the mind kind of goes somewhere. And then what Cammie does is she brings it back, and she's like, nope, not going to go there. We're going to come here, right, to the present. So that's a great example of that in motion, essentially. So the mind is going to wander, but you intentionally bring your attention back. You know, and Gretchen, I think it was Gretchen, right, that shared the example of, you know, when someone says something to you that feels kind of like, oh, I can't believe you just said that. The pause is part of the practice of kind of stopping and then kind of going, okay, I think I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to say what I am, you know, feeling, and I know it's not right, but I'm going to let it out. Or you might say, you know what, that doesn't make me happy, and I'm not going to do it. Again, I'm simplifying it, obviously, but it's a practice of continuously catching yourself when you find you are going into that space and kind of going, nope, come back. That's the wandering mind and unhappy mind kind of example there. So one more slide, and then I swear I'm going to stop talking. Okay. So if any of you were wondering if you have time to practice mindfulness, which I'm going to be very curious to hear your feedback, you know, if you spend like 20 minutes a day, and that's even on the upper end of, you know, say you're dedicating 20 minutes to a sitting practice every day, that's 1% of your day. And so that's a really tiny, tiny percentage. And say, you know, you don't have 20 minutes, let's say, every day to do it. You have about 900 opportunities to practice every single minute of your day, if you choose, right? And so in my mind, I was kind of going, wow, so that's accounting for, I get to sleep, and maybe I get to practice, you know, an intentional mindfulness meditation practice. I'm doing that as well. So if you're doing those, you still have, and if you're not doing those, you still have 900 opportunities in a day. And what I mean by that is every minute that you're awake, you can choose to practice what we're talking about with mindfulness. Being present, being aware, what's going on in my head, how am I feeling, what is that sensation that I'm feeling in my shoulders and my jaw. All of those things are like constantly something that you can have awareness of. And it's, again, like I said, it's something that you build with practice. So I don't want to give the sense that, you just do this like once a day for a minute and suddenly things just like, transform. It does take practice, and you want to be consistent with it. So with that, I want to ask, what were your observations as you went through the exercise of trying to figure out, like, well, how do I include this in my day? And the other side of it is, like, I already include this in my day. And so to help others to kind of hear, what are you doing that you feel, is in the context of mindfulness and how that's helping you. So I want to hear some feedback from you all about your experience as it stands today.
And I just started to unmute lines. Debbie, you're unmuted, and then Gretchen, Heather, Marion, you guys just need to unmute on your end.
I can start. This is Heather.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Rita. So
Hello.
one of the things that I started doing about a week and a half ago was getting up just a little bit earlier, which it's kind of easy right now because it's getting light so early. Mm-hmm. And I have been sitting on my couch. My whole house is quiet. The kids are quiet. My dog is still asleep. Yeah. And setting my timer, it's silly, but only for 3 minutes. Okay. And then I sit there, I sit Indian style, and I hold my hands up, and I just kind of receive. And I work on my breathing, and whatever word comes to me, that's the word I really try and embrace. Mm-hmm. And it's been, I have to say, it's been so beneficial. I've only done this for a week and a half, but the first time I did it, the word that came to me was receive. Mm. And as a mom, as a friend, as a spouse, as a female, I think we're always giving, and it was such a good signal to say, whoa, you need to slow down. And just embrace every single moment that you have today and try and be as conscious about it as possible. So that's my experience, and it's good. Yeah, grateful.
You highlighted a really important piece of this, which is, to find the time might be before the whole house wakes up. That's my time too. But it isn't the time that works for everyone. But I think, is to find that time in your day where you're like, this is mine. And it's 3 minutes is what you said, right? Which is beautiful. Yep. So it doesn't have to be 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour or whatever. It can be. But doing it consistently in that fashion is a great thing to do.
Thank you.
And allowing things to happen. That's the part I was hearing with you. You're just allowing it to surface.
Yeah, I didn't want to force it. And so I just thought whatever comes to me will come to me, and that'll be okay.
Yeah. Cool, thank you. Anyone else?
Debbie, you've got your hand up.
Hi guys, this is Debbie. For about a month now, I actually have gotten into reading tarot cards, and so with that, I've been allowing myself about 5 minutes every morning after my husband leaves with the kids, and I'm blessed with the opportunity to have extra time in my morning, so I just kind of do that. I pour my coffee, I sit down, I do some deep breathing, and it's been a challenge, but I enjoy that time because it's really helping to ground me and to learn to sit still, which is very difficult for me, and then really listen into my intuition as well. Cool. So that's kind of the path I've taken over the last month, and it's kind of it's a little woo-woo and funny for some people to hear that when I do share, because I don't share with everybody. My husband saw the cards and he's like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Here, I'm there reading." And he's like, "No, because we're going to pull the death card." And I'm like, "No, it's not like that." So I kind of gave up. But it's something I've always been interested in, and it's really crazy is that ever since I was a kid, I was really interested in numerology. So that it's kind of tied in all together, and so it's been fun. It's been something for me to educate myself on, as well as really practice mindfulness and practice shutting up.
Being quiet. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool. And, you know, as you described that, it made me think of, you know, Cammie knows this well as well, is that for me, you know, there was a time where I'm like, mindfulness? Do you think I'm going to go and, you know, that's just like, that's going to be, but it's one of those things of like, as you describe what you say you do in the morning, that is very similar to my experience in life where it is important to allow those things to surface, right? And Cammie and Sarah have told us that a million times, but it's in that quiet that you realize what's the word? It's how real it is and how you can then kind of transform it in when you're up and out off the cushion, you're in the world, then you can bring that to people in a way that feels aligned for you. And so it's cool to hear you kind of, I was curious though, like, so when, for both Heather and you and anyone else on the call too, I love that you found the practice, the time where you're dedicating to practice, right? Like this is my time and I'm going to do it now. How does it work? How do you carry that through the course of your day as you're going about your business?
For me personally, I haven't really gone and focused so much on that, just since this is still something very fairly new. I try to take whatever messages I get from that, or feelings or thoughts or whatnot, and carry it through the day. And I do this every single day. So I read a card, and sometimes it's a different card. I've started making notes so that if a message is coming up, popping up for me regularly, then okay, I haven't learned that, and I need to go back, and I need to really focus on that thing, because the woo-woo universe, the angels, the God, whatever you want to go and say as far as that, because there's a lot more to tarot than people understand, is that, you know, I'm trying to understand those messages, and so I'm still working on that personally. And I also wanted to kind of put this out there that I am a mother. I have 2 kids. I have an 18-month-old and a teenager, and on the days that I have my baby with me, like on the weekends, I still sit down and I go and have my quiet space. Like I put her down and say, "Here, watch Elmo," and I go upstairs, and she'll inevitably always come upstairs and look for me. And she's like, "Mama," and I'm like, "Mommy's reading her card." She's like, "Cards?" So she knows that that's my time, but I still make that time for myself, even if I'm not getting up for the baby. So for anyone that says, "I don't have time," it's like, just even if it's 2 minutes, between, you know, your kids doing something or you having a meeting or whatnot. I found it to be really important.
Yes, yeah. And I would encourage everyone on this call too to really, you know, what I said in the beginning of this call was to use every experience that you go through as a mindfulness practice. Because I think for us, it's like, you know, when we're sitting, and it's all, you know, everything is not controlled, but in a sense it is, right? Like we've got everything in the way that we want it. That's a very important part. That's what you're describing, to do that every day. But then the majority of our day, we're not sitting in that space, right? We're around people and we're around whatever, the news and the everything. And it's just like, so to use and get in the practice of using every moment as, wow, I'm going to practice now, and keep reminding yourself to do that. Anyone else?
Rita, I had one last thing to say, and then I promise I'll be quiet.
No.
So looking at this pie chart here, I've learned something very recently where I was like, wow, it's so stupid, but I found it to be such a huge aha for me, is that when going and planning out your day, your schedule, and seeing everything, I think a lot of times we tend to go and say, okay, I have this, and this, and then I don't have time for sleep. I don't have time for mindfulness. I don't have time for this. Like, if we go and understand that, sleep for me is very important, and it's hard with a little one, that if we go and shift it to where we say, okay, this is the time for sleep, I need to make sure I have this time for sleep, and everything else falls underneath it, that I think that really helps to be able to put the things in our schedules that really is important. And just had to share that. I saw the pie chart, and I'm like, it looks like we're not putting enough sleep in there, but that's it. That's my 2 cents.
No, so what you're saying is like how you prioritize. And again, it's going back to choices, right? I think that's part of what every minute, and I know it sounds kind of almost overwhelming of like, wait, every minute I got to make a choice. Like that's not the intent, but it is kind of thinking about like things are not happening to you. Like you're choosing certain things in your day. And so to your point, sleep is really important to me. So you know what? I'm going to prioritize that. I'm going to make sure I have time for that. I'm going to construct everything around that. And also know that maybe there are, 2 days in the week this week that, sleep ain't going to happen the way we imagined it. And that's fine. Life goes on. But it's also, it's this mindset of kind of thinking about what choices am I making for myself and for the well-being of those that whether I'm serving them, whether they're my family, whoever, because it affects everybody, not just ourselves. So excellent point about making priorities and choices that serve you. Anyone else? Okay. So I think, the intent with this chart again, and it's, thanks Debbie for it, and Heather and everyone, it's just, we have, the time is there. The question is, are we going to dedicate time to certain things? And in the event that there are days where you can't sit for even those 3 minutes because your day is so packed, then use every other 900 opportunities in your day to practice. So that's my point about you always have time to practice, whether you're sitting and doing it like in a dedicated way, or if you're just using your life as it happens as your practice. And that is really truly the intent of mindfulness. Is it's not intended just to be something that we experience when we're sitting quietly. It's something that we take with us wherever we go. So keep that in mind. And then the next slide, we're going to go over that, and then we're going to do a practice, and then we're probably going to close here in a few. So, wow, I can't even read that. My eyes hurt. So why practice? And I think all of you on the call, truthfully, as I'm hearing the feedback, already know why you do it. So I've just kind of, listed a few things which you're probably already familiar with, but there is a gentleman named Rick Hansen, and I love his quote that says, actually, I don't think he uses the quote a lot, but he's not the original person that said this: neurons that fire together wire together. And so this is almost tied to what Heather said about prioritizing positivity in a sense, but it's like whatever you keep repeating over and over, that's basically what's going to wire together in your brain. And so with repeated practice, you're intentionally choosing what you want to think, what you want to feel, and practicing mindfulness when you're sitting. I do want to kind of emphasize the fact that it is a gentle, kind practice for ourselves. So when we have emotions that don't feel that positive, or if we have thoughts that we're just like, man, I just can't believe I said that, or why do I keep thinking this? There's an element of being kind to yourself and allowing those things to surface and to be okay with it, and just allow it to be. So that's the piece of neurons that fire together, wire together. This ability to self-monitor, the more you are aware, you have now that space and choice to self-regulate. So one thing that you will get really good at as you practice mindfulness is like when you're practicing paying attention to your breath, for instance. When you are in a moment of stress, you can notice how your breathing has changed and then actually self-calm and self-regulate and kind of go, you're going to be fine, Rita. And then just have those conversations with yourself. And actually it's a physical thing too, because you can actually self-monitor and self-regulate how you're feeling. So it's building resiliency, essentially. It's how you bounce back from things. It encourages you to slow down, which I've heard you say on this call that, yeah, I need to slow down. So it's like it helps you slow down. We've talked about developing the sense of empathy and compassion because our connection to people is a big part of our day-to-day existence. And creativity. This is another piece. I know Cami shares a lot with us about this where, you know, if you're not creating space, that creativity can't surface. So being outside, but taking the time, like dedicating time for your creation, that's an important piece. And that's part of being mindful, is just creating that quiet for yourself. And, you know, like I said, the intent is you want to be engaged with your life. And engaging in life doesn't mean it's all just happiness and smiles. Part of mindfulness practice is kind of saying, I feel like crap right now. I notice that. And now the question is, am I going to do something about it, or am I going to just allow it to be for a while and just be comfortable with knowing that, you know what, I feel crappy and that's okay. And then I let it go. Right? And so it's just repeating that over and over and over. And the way I just said it, it almost sounds like it's like, oh my God, it's such a chore. I got to do it over and over. The part that makes this fun is if you get curious about your own experience. And sometimes there's fear involved with like, well, I don't know what I'm experiencing. It just feels scary. But if you kind of drop that for a few and just kind of get curious about, wow, what is, like, wow, why am I, that's an odd thing I'm experiencing, and just go with that, it'll open up all kinds of other things. And so curiosity is a big piece of this practice of just allowing things to, to interest you. And I don't care how mundane it is, but be interested in things. And so that might be my last slide, Sarah, if you don't mind advancing. Sorry. Yeah, so this was just something that you might want to do. And truthfully, I'm already hearing you're doing certain things already. And so what I would challenge you to do is, what are 3 additional things that you can do, right? And maybe even in the realm of not necessarily, you know, you have the practices that you have, but like, how do you extend this to your whole day? How do you like, how does the practice of mindfulness, that when you're sitting and you're observing and you're, you know, being quiet and you're being inspired and all of that, well, how do you take that into your day and experience that moment by moment during the course of your day? And so that's, given that we're kind of short on time, maybe that's going to be your homework when you're off on your own and get some time to ponder that. But there's one more practice that I'd like to do for maybe like a couple more minutes. And then if there's questions, we can go over that, and then we'll close after that. But this practice, what I'm going to ask you to do is, again, this is something that you can do anywhere that you're at. You know, get into that awake, alert posture, soft front, straight back, you know, feet planted on the floor, or maybe your legs are touching the floor, you're cross-legged. And just breathe normally. And just feel your breath as you inhale and exhale. Just notice where you feel your breath. Is it in your abdomen, or your chest, or your nose, Like, where do you feel your breath right now? And then just become aware of the space that's in front of you. You know, there might be a table, maybe there's some other object in front of you, but just feel whatever that space feels like in front of you. While holding that awareness, notice the space on either side of you, on your right side, on your left side. You know, the space all the way from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet on either side of you. And if it helps, even stretch your arms out if that helps you feel the space around you. Notice the space below your feet and underneath the floor, the earth. Notice the space above your head, extending all the way past the roof into the sky. And finally, notice all the space behind you, extending back beyond walls, out into the open. And just notice how that space is all around you. And just kind of really feel it. You know, close your eyes if you have to, and yeah, just notice the space everywhere around you. Take a couple of deep breaths. Release. Again. And release. So with that, my friends, I think we are almost at our end here. I do know that I have a couple more slides. Cami and Sarah, are these going to be made available to people after the fact?
We can do, I mean, when I post it, I can,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I'll post the video is what I'll do, the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Sounds good. So, any questions before we part? Comments, questions? Register for our workshop.
Yeah, so go ahead and tell them about this workshop, Rita.
Okay. So Marianne Littler, which I'm sure some of you know, she and I are super excited to be doing this workshop in June. And it is focused on communication, essentially, and how we communicate with each other. And so it's to learn, what different styles exist. All of us talk different ways, we hear different things, and how do we do that through using mindfulness as well. So as part of this workshop, we'll have assessments, communication style assessments done for everyone that attends. And then as a group, we will go through those and you'll get, practical ways of understanding your own communication style and then applying that to communication styles that are different than yours. And so I have a discount code of the VIP discount code. So if you end up registering for it, please do use that so you get that special discount for Cami and Sarah's group. Thank you, Cami.
So awesome. Thank you for that code, Rita. That's fantastic.
Yes. And thank you for all it was really beautiful.
Cool. Well, and if questions come up after the call or if there's anything, I would love to hear more. I know we're kind of going through this a little fast, and so always open to hearing any experiences that you have, or if you want to talk about any of it anytime. The contact info is my contact info on here too, just so that people have it if it might be on the next slide. You can reach out anytime. And another awesome quote: you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So yeah, please do reach out if there's anything I can assist with.
Well, thank you so much, Rita. It's really cool to see everything that you're putting out into the world. It just makes me very happy, and I love what you're doing, and it's so important, and I'm always learning from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Cami and Sarah, for this really cool opportunity. I really loved. I wish I could see all of you, but I know you're here with me. But yeah, it was really fun chatting with all of you. So keep in touch.
Thank you.
And practice.
That's fantastic. And you guys all go out and have a wonderful paused rest of your week.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.